We have this breaking news and the huge revelation that sources tell Ron DeSantis is ending his campaign for president. We're going to go right now to Dasha Burns in Manchester, who's tracking the campaign. Dasha, tell us more. What have you been told specifically about this?
Well, look, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis just tweeted moments ago saying success is not final, failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts. That is a quote from Winston Churchill. Alex, we talked just earlier today wondering about what these last-minute moves were going from South Carolina, making this last-minute pivot to New Hampshire. And here you have it, suspending his campaign that has been fraught from the beginning, literally from the launch, when, if you recall, that Twitter Spaces launch with Elon Musk that was marred by technical glitches and failures. And really, from the beginning, this guy that was supposed to be the next standard bearer for the Republican Party, that so many look to as the person who could potentially beat Donald Trump, then found himself in a race for second place with Nikki Haley. He's been saying for the last several weeks that he's in it for the long haul, that he was going to South Carolina. But we've been talking about the realities of that, which is you got to have the finances, the resources to do that, and a pathway forward. And in all of my conversations recently with him, with his team, they really struggled to articulate what that pathway was going to be, how he could make that case. And here we are at the end of this saga that, again, we had seen somebody who really struggled to find a message, to find a footing, to find a way to deal with former President Trump. And in the end of the day, former President Trump defined Florida Governor Ron DeSantis before Florida Governor Ron DeSantis could define himself. And today is a campaign that has come to an end before they could get to that promised land of South Carolina that they were hoping for, Alex.
Yeah. Let me ask you, Dasha, there have been those, his detractors mostly, who say that a lot of the reason Ron DeSantis is now in this position of dropping out, but that he finished a distant second in Iowa and would have potentially finished a distant third in New Hampshire, a lot of it has to do with his lack of ability to connect with voters. It's not, it's a personality problem. It's that and or strategic mistakes within his campaign. With your dealings following this campaign, what would you chalk this up to overall?
I do think it's a combination of factors, Alex. I think it is that from the start, there was always a vacuum of leadership. They always put their trust into folks who were more loyal to them rather than people who had experience running presidential campaigns. I think they were hoping that that major victory that he had in 2022 in his reelect, that was going to just carry them into this presidential race. And running for governor and running for president are two very, very different things. They ran out of money. There was drama between the campaign and the super PAC that constantly overshadowed any successes that they had. And yeah, at the end of the day, you did have a candidate who struggled to humanize himself to the voters. And only in the end, Alex, it's funny, I was commenting recently on the air that he has started to tell some personal stories. He started to actually become a better candidate in these last couple of weeks, but it's too little too late. To give them a little bit of credit, though, there are plenty of sources I talked to who also said, you know, DeSantis could have run a perfect campaign. It still would not have mattered just because of the dominance of former President Trump that you saw in Iowa, that we potentially will see again here in New Hampshire. Now, the challenge for Nikki Haley that could I don't know if they're celebrating this dropout from Haley before New Hampshire, because what we've seen in the math, Alex, is that the ballot share that DeSantis has will likely go to former President Trump, because remember, the voters that Haley's going for and the voters DeSantis are going for are very different, and the DeSantis voter base is much more likely to go for Trump than they are to go for Haley. So that could actually potentially boost Trump in this New Hampshire primary. But again, a candidate that had a hard time connecting, a campaign that was full of process errors throughout. But ultimately, this would have been a very different primary race to cover, Alex, had it not been for former President Trump's presence here.
I'm curious, Dasha, has anyone handed you anything that tells you at a certain point he is going to make a statement, appear in front of cameras? And then the big question will be, despite everything that Donald Trump has said about him, will he then come out and offer a warm, a vociferous endorsement of Donald Trump? And if he does, what does that buy him?
That is the million-dollar question. Will he endorse? And if he does, is he going to try to consolidate for Haley, or is he going to go for former President Trump? I'm just getting word from my producer. He just endorsed former President Trump. I'm breaking this news to you right on the air, Alex. This is a surprise. If you have heard DeSantis talk about the former president, he has said over and over again that former President Trump expects you to kiss the ring. When he was going after Iowa Governor Kim Reynolds, when she endorsed him, every time he has gone after DeSantis for being disloyal, he has said he refuses to kiss the ring the way that others do. And there you have it. He is now falling in line with the man who is now the leader of the Republican Party that none of the voters that I've talked to really seem to be able to let go of and do want to see. We've 51% in Iowa, right? The majority of voters in Iowa. We'll see what happens here in New Hampshire. But it does not seem that primary voters are interested in a Trump alternative.